You are now tuned into the Anxious Ambition podcast, where you'll be hearing raw and unfiltered conversations with those who struggle with mental illness but refuse to let that get in the way of them achieving their dreams. Our hope is that by hearing their stories, you are inspired to do more. Here are their stories.
Anxious Ambition.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Justin with the Anxious Ambition podcast. I know it has been quite some time since you've heard my voice. It's probably been about a year. Whenever COVID started, that was my excuse for stopping, so take that as you will. But now, we got some time on our hands, and we're really looking to push this podcast further. And, our goal with it is to have guests on who are chasing their dreams, or how we like to say, like, committing to their dreams, even though they may have had some struggles in their life. Maybe they're currently struggling, anxiety, depression, you name it, but they're not allowing that to be their defining moment that tells them, oh, I can't do anything because I'm suffering from this and that. So today's guest is the host of the Dana Joy Project, which is a podcast, blog. I'll let her explain a little bit more, but basically she promotes self-help, self-love especially, and it's all things self-improvement. So let's welcome to the show, Dana. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Can you tell everyone a little bit more about Dana Joy Project?
Yeah, totally. So, I started the Dana Joy Project this year. I got into podcasting after 2020 with the pandemic. Everything kind of slowed down, and my friend and I decided we'd work on a project together. And I had so much fun doing it, and went through kind of a tough time with mental health and just some life struggles.
Sure.
And decided that through all the healing that I went through and all the self-love that I cultivated within myself, that I wanted to put these tools out here for the world, as well as connect with other individuals who are working through their struggles.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for the people at home, we met, right? Let's say 2016 or something like that, 2017, let's say, random for me, at least. I just honestly was just looking to get my hair cut. You were a hairstylist at the time. Actually, I'm going to tell you the real story. So
Let it out.
I know. So Kara, my wife, worked with this guy, and he's like, hey, you got to go see Jeffrey at the place he used to work. And I'm like, all right, I'm looking for, I'm a salon guy, not a barber guy, whatever. So I'm trying to get in with Jeffrey, can't get in with him. And then someone like, you can come. I'm like, I need to get a haircut. Like, this shit, it needs to happen. So like, all right. So I ended up, same place, but ended up meeting you. And small world, your brother played baseball with my wife's brother, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I do something like that. So then obviously, we definitely vibed together. We got our hair cut. I mean, you cut my hair for a long time. Eventually did end up getting my hair cut by Jeffrey, but because you actually had a career change, right?
I did.
And then you also moved. We can get there too. But so talk me through, how'd you go from cutting hair to moving to Colorado, from like Chicagoland area to Chicago to now you're podcasting?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so my story with cutting hair, I actually went to beauty school during high school. So I went my junior and senior year, and would go half the day at high school, half the day at beauty school. Would go Saturdays to beauty school, spring break, summer break, every day.
You're committed.
It was a big commitment. So I graduated high school, got my diploma, and then also a couple weeks later took my state boards and started cutting hair at the age of 18.
Wow.
So I did that for a couple of years before getting really curious about college. And just kind of, I'm like the type of person who gets bored and wants to try something new.
Totally get it. Yep.
So I decided to take classes part-time and just kind of, work on my associate's degree.
What type of classes were you taking?
Oh gosh, just your typical humanities.
The gen ed stuff?
Gen eds, yeah, gen eds. And then eventually I got to my business core because
Okay.
I knew I probably wanted to major in marketing. I figured that I'm a creative type person
Mm-hmm.
with doing hair. That's like what I was naturally good at.
Sure.
And in high school, I don't think I ever fully tried my hardest. I just kind of did what I had to do.
Yeah, I get it. You and me
um,
both. Yeah.
yeah.
C's do get
So,
degrees. It's a fact.
right, it's true.
And in high school.
So, yeah, when I went to college, I think that I was so curious, and it was cool being able to choose the classes that you wanted to choose, that you were interested in. Even if they were
Mm-hmm.
gen eds, it was like you had a little bit more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So during my business core, I ended up taking an accounting class, which I went in with a mindset of probably not going to like this.
Yeah.
Everybody has
Yeah.
something negative to say.
Yeah. Sounds to me. It sounds like boring desk life. Like yeah. Yeah.
Totally. But I think it was like day 3 of that class, and I was like, oh my goodness, I love it.
Good. That's awesome.
And I think for me, it was a few different reasons of why I fell in love with accounting. First of all, I realized that maybe I had never looked into something like so on such a deep level. With in school, I didn't challenge myself or push myself because I was
Mm-hmm.
able to just kind of
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And
It wasn't going to help you in the time, right? It's not.
right,
Yeah. You had your heart set on cutting hair, and yeah.
totally. So in this case, yeah, I think it really helped me understand that I actually love using my logical brain. That
Love that.
that
Yeah.
creativity was awesome, but logic really serves a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and putting things together and having them fit in a perfect place, it was so crisp and clear to me. Everything was so crisp and clear. And so I was like, I'm running with it. And after that, I decided to not go to school part-time anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was going to enroll in college full-time and go for accounting.
That's awesome. I think that's probably the time when I called in to get a appointment. They're like, "Oh, Dean doesn't work here." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then honestly, this is the last time we talked until a couple weeks ago. But so I'm assuming you. I mean, it's an assumption, but did you start looking into school because you know you wanted to do more in life? Like, did you feel like kind of like you fizzled out in hair? Like it was kind of you reached your peak in a sense, or
Not necessarily,
okay?
because hair has always been such a passion for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and really what the passion for me is the people.
Yeah.
Sitting down behind a chair is it's such a way to connect with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody sits down in your chair and they are open, for the most part, to sharing what's going on in their day, how they're feeling, struggles that they may be going through. And for me, connecting with those people, it just like gives me life. Like
Sure.
that's something that just gives me energy. So yeah, when I decided to go into school full time, it's more so that I struggle with going into things half-assed.
Yeah, I get it.
You know?
Yeah.
And so when I decided to commit to that, I knew that I wanted to fully experience what school had to offer, and I wanted to take advantage of, mentoring programs and studying and making sure I was like fully immersed in the material that I was learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that like going to school would probably mean I'm going to do a job change because I also want to learn what it is like to work in that industry.
Oh, because you never did. Was that your first job, cutting hair?
Yeah. So,
Wow.
well, yeah, the first job I had was I was 15 working as a shampoo girl in a hair salon.
Oh, wow.
One of my first jobs. I had a few other ones actually. I was a telemarketer for a little bit.
Oh boy. Oh my gosh.
And I worked at Portillo's, which the Chicago people all know
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah. So how did you
So,
get from going to class to Colorado? Like how does that happen?
yeah. Well, in 2016,
Okay.
so probably around the time that you and I met,
Sure.
I took a trip to Colorado, and it was an awesome road trip where I fell in love with the lifestyle of Colorado.
We actually
It's just,
we actually talked about that trip. I remember
did
this.
we?
Yeah, like at first, I'm pretty sure that's why it's so ingrained in my mind. I'm like, why do I remember Colorado so much? Because we talked about, like you said, we just met that day. We were like, when you're getting your hair cut, for some reason, it's almost like therapy. It's weird, but You like open up about, it's like, oh, I just met this person. Let's just tell them my whole life.
I
And you were
know.
telling about Colorado. So go ahead.
Yeah. And that's funny because I remember meeting you, and I was
Mm-hmm.
intrigued because you had an entrepreneurial mindset, and I wanted to know all about it. So it's
Mm-hmm. Well,
cool that
thank
even
you.
back then, we're working on
Always
similar
trying, huh?
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that. But yeah, so I took an awesome trip to Colorado. I did a lot of hiking and exploring, and I didn't really have a set agenda for that trip.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really just like going and seeing what this place was all about. And I ended up in this town called Fort Collins. And for some reason, I kid you not, like I had this like electromagnetic pull to this
Hey,
town.
yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
Something called me
Yeah.
here. And after I left, I knew at some point I would be moving there.
Wow.
I just didn't know when. I knew that I had to finish college, so
Mm-hmm.
I had about 2 more years left until I graduated.
Okay.
And then I wanted to get some work experience in my new industry, and then that I would be figuring out how to get over here.
Wow. How
So
I can only imagine that jump must have been stressful, full of anxiety. I mean, can you tell me about that, like from a mental standpoint? Like, where was your head at during that transition?
so something about me is I am pretty good at making drastic life changes.
Okay,
And I know that that's something that stresses a lot of people out.
sure.
And we'll probably talk about this, but I was married, and I
Mm-hmm.
think my husband at the time struggled with like making big life changes, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
let's do it.
Right.
Like,
That
let's
is a big
go.
change. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there was definitely a little bit of like anxiety, but I always think to myself, if this is something that I really want to do
Mm-hmm.
and I don't do it, how will I feel in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you know?
Yeah. That'd be eating at you still.
Yeah. So I decided I was going to, it was one day, I think, I don't know, it hit me. It was like, I can't let any more time go by. We got to make the move. Let's do it. Let's go for it. What's holding us back?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had an awesome conversation with my boss actually.
Really?
And I said to him like, hey, I'm moving to Colorado. This is the date. And I will either help you train somebody new, or I would love to keep my job and work remote. And my boss was phenomenal and
Oh,
was like,
wow.
we'll make it happen. Let's do it.
Oh shit. So you're still working for them?
I'm still working for them.
That's wow. So you lucked out. That's perfect.
Yeah,
So
I
you
did.
okay? So you still work? You work from home out there
I do. Yeah.
How-
So I
how-
started working
before it
from
was
home like a year before the
before it was
the
a thing.
pandemic. Yeah.
So how was that transition? Was it fine? I mean,
I think the hardest part for me is because I'm such a social
mm,
person who values connection. Going into an environment where I'm by myself was
mm,
a big change.
I'm sure.
And I think I had to learn new ways to cope and get my social fix, I guess you could say.
Sure. And you and your husband at the time moved out there, correct?
We did. Yep.
Okay. And then let's fast forward to, let's say, what, 2020? Is this when it broke apart or whatever? I don't want to get too much
Yeah.
into detail, but okay. So
Right.
fast forward, how long have you been there until that happens? A couple years?
Yeah. So we moved there in September of 2019,
Oh, okay.
and it was about June of 2020 that we had the conversation.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I mean, where was your head at mentally? I mean, you don't have to get into like details, but like, were
Yeah.
you dealing with any mental issues or, I mean, I can only imagine it might not have been the most comfortable thing in the world. So,
Yeah. No, it was definitely uncomfortable.
hmm
And I think so I'll tell you my coping mechanism
hmm
is being really busy.
mm,
I
got it.
I load up my plate to a point where I almost can't I can't even think about what's going on inside. What my inner voice is trying to tell me.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think we all have, unfortunately, like some bad coping skills. You know what I mean? It's perfect. It's actually one of the things I was going to ask you. It's like, okay, what's your go-to like bad coping mechanism? And I can relate to you. It's like, okay, if I just give myself so much shit to do. I can't even think about the stuff that's going wrong or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I can
Totally.
relate.
Yeah. Yeah, that was me. In school, I was wearing so many different hats.
Mm-hmm.
I was an intern at the current job that I work at now. I was working full time as a hairstylist. I was still keeping that around. I was a full time student. I was a wife. I was a friend. I was a dog mom. I was trying to maintain my household,
God damn.
and I was trying to keep everything perfect. And inside I was screaming. So I think really what had happened is that I had these feelings inside of me for a long time that I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to suppress. I was just trying to keep it down,
Sure.
just trying to hold it all in, and just keep making everyone happy, keep achieving. If I keep
Mm-hmm.
achieving, I don't have to deal with this stuff, right? I just hit
Yeah.
another milestone. Sweet, let's like keep moving forward. And the thing is when you move to a new state, you're starting from ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
All of my family, my friends, my commitments, they were all back in Illinois. So I'm sitting there with my inner voice
Oh.
speaking to me pretty loud saying, "Hey, Dana,
Mm-hmm. Cut the
something's
shit.
going on."
Yeah. You're not fooling anyone anymore.
Right. So I think like when I first moved out there, we kind of talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
I started seeing a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and I was sad a lot. I was definitely sad. I think I cried and I couldn't find happiness, and I was it was just a cycle where it was hard to get out of.
Do you feel like
And
you feel like you were depressed at the time?
it very well could be depressed. I
Mm-hmm.
very well could be. I think that's probably a good way to explain it, because it lasted for a long period of time, and it was
Mm-hmm.
day after day. I mean, it's interesting because I always have a hard time saying it's depression. When I think about depression, I think about sometimes like not being able to get out of the bed, get out of the bed or get yourself dressed. And I
Sure.
know that I was still functioning and doing those things, but it was like a deep sadness
Yeah.
and a deep discomfort, you know?
Was it more like apathetic and like for me, like I mean I'll talk about like for my depression, like I wouldn't like I don't want to say that you shouldn't feel comfortable saying that you had depression because it didn't look like the stereotypical like can't get out of bed and all that. Like for me, I mean, and there's a lot of high functioning people with depression.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself someone like if I didn't tell you I had depression or anxiety, you probably wouldn't know. I think that's kind of a
Right.
way, people assume but like the sadness, that pit in your stomach, that emptiness. I mean, that's beyond sadness. You know what I mean? You're not just sad for a reason. There's more to it. And I think that's kind of what depression is, in my opinion. I think just for the people listening at home, like, don't feel like you need to fit the mold of depression per se, like the way you described it. There's so many layers to it. Like you can literally just like not have interest in anything anymore. Like, for me, I deal with a lot of like I don't want to say like emotionless, but like there's times where like I'm not happy, I'm not sad.
Mm-hmm.
That's depression. Your emotions are suppressed. To me, I'm not an expert, but it's like there's so many things. Like if something's going wrong, so you feel wrong, go talk to a therapist, a doctor, psychiatrist, because they can kind of help you. Be like, hey, you're actually dealing with depression. Like you don't, it's not anything you're doing wrong, or it's beyond sadness, and like you get the help you need. So like you going to therapy is, I'm sure, like you said, it was a huge part of learning what you're actually going through. And it's like, oh, I can fix. I mean, we're not fixed, but you can improve yourself and grow from this, and learn more about yourself even.
I think what you just said hit the nail on the head with the, not feeling the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I can relate to so hard is I don't know if it's ignoring it or like not sure what you're feeling, but it's just yeah.
And it
I can
fucking
relate.
sucks. It
It
sucks.
does.
It
It totally
sucks
does.
because like you realize that you have depression, or you're in depression when things that for a fact make you happy aren't doing it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh shit, something's wrong.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like oh, I love ice cream or something. You know what I mean? Like it's like I just
Right.
know, like it could be, it's not a person, it's not a job or anything. It's something that you love, and it doesn't feel anything. Like, yeah, something's wrong. Get some help, because it's okay to get help. So
Totally. Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. So during this time after seeing a therapist,
mhm.
I think, she helped me adjust with the move and asked me a lot of great questions. And I still wasn't able to come to terms with my inner feelings,
Yeah,
I think I was able to bring them to the surface, but I wasn't ready to acknowledge or accept
sure.
what they were telling me.
I think that takes a lot of time, if not forever, to totally just get, accept everything.
Right. Oh, it's always a work in progress, right?
Yeah. When you were doing
Yeah.
that, did you learn any coping mechanisms that really helped you that you would, want to share with others? Like, what
Oh,
helps
totally.
you when you're in, like, if you're anxious, like dealing with maybe some depression or even sadness, what kind of helps get you through it?
Yeah, I can think of a couple of things right off the top of my head. The first one is I am big on Google Docs
Okay.
or notebooks.
Sure.
And I actually, before our interview, was looking through all my notes in my Google Docs, and it's
Hmm.
hilarious because during certain times of my life, I will just go ham on just typing out everything that I'm thinking
Yeah.
or feeling. And I will get really curious about all these things, and I will just let it flow. I
Yeah.
will just let it flow out
Just
of me.
vomit. Yeah. Like word vomit.
Yes. And and when I do that, I learn so much about myself, and it allows me to pinpoint what it is that's hurting or that might need some extra love or
Hmm.
care. So that's the number one thing I would say. If you're having a tough time, you're super sad, you're super anxious, just like take a moment and sit with yourself. And I think don't put pressure on yourself. That's another
Hmm.
thing. Like
Yeah. You can't
I
judge the way
say
you're feeling.
no, just be with yourself. Just
Yeah.
let it happen and know that it's super super human to feel all of these feelings.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you said that. I do the same thing. I got a journal sitting over there, and when things are stuck in your head, like they just honestly they stay in there. I tell people all the time, like, I mean, I prefer to like physically write it, but your phone works
Yeah,
too. Like it's better than nothing, because it's gonna stay in
totally.
your head. If it's something you can't address right now, like maybe it's bills or personal relations or something like that. Like, if you, like you said, you just let your brain just do the writing for you and just let it all out, examine it, and be like, oh shit, okay. And then you can come up with a plan if it's something you can fix, or it's not going to do you any good to just keep thinking about it, like you said, and obsessing about it. It's like, okay, just get it on paper, get it in your phone. It's kind of crazy going back. Have you gone back like and looked? It's like,
Yes.
what? I can't even read mine.
Really?
Well, physically cannot read it. Like, I have a handwriting
Yeah.
so bad. Like, it's literally like chicken scratch. Like, I could show you whatever it's over there, but I could show you, wouldn't be able to read it
Yeah.
at all. And it could say
Yeah.
like some fucked up stuff. Like, I mean,
Right.
and like that's something
Yeah.
too. Like, don't be like you said. Don't. We all have weird thoughts. Like, if you're sitting at home listening to this, you think of some weird shit. Sometimes it could be bad, good. Don't feel weird writing it out, because you're just writing it, getting the thoughts out of your head. You don't control every one of your thoughts. Like, it's just
You
you don't
don't.
don't feel bad. You don't. You really don't feel bad about it. So like I can't. I mean, I can't agree with you more on that.
Yeah. That leads me to the next thing
Yeah,
too. Like
perfect.
when you just said you can't control, your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation.
Mm.
That is something that has been huge in my life. I think I've had like two spiritual awakenings.
Hey, that's
The
cool.
first the first happened in 2017, and
Okay.
that was when I was going through wearing so many different hats, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm so anxious, I can't even handle myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I found meditation and personal development in general.
Okay.
And at first, when I started meditating, that was definitely a tool to shut my anxiety up. I'm like,
Yeah.
I do not want to hear you. I
Yeah.
do not want to be with you. I do not want this uncomfortable feeling anymore.
Yep.
And it really helped. It was like, whoa, I could do that, and I could just like sit with it, and I could, because once you hone in on to where that anxiety feeling might be surfacing,
Mm-hmm.
you notice that tends to change. So it might be super strong And when you fight something, I think sometimes
Yeah.
things get stronger, right? Like,
Oh, 100%. You're just fueling the fire. Literally. It's like pouring
right.
gasoline on it. You cannot fight anxiety like that. And not saying
Totally.
don't fight it in the moment. You got to accept it.
You got to accept it.
You got to
And
accept
that
it.
is, I think meditation is actually a practice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
lifting weights, you're,
For
you're growing
sure.
your muscle.
Yeah.
It's just like meditating is practicing becoming comfortable with those uncomfortable feelings that are going to surface in your body.
Mm-hmm. So when you say meditation, how do you do it? Because it's pretty, it's a that
Yeah,
word, means so many different things. Like walk me through like what's your meditation look like? And has it evolved?
totally.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So my meditation practice has definitely evolved. So
Okay.
when, like I said, when I first came across it, it was really a practice that I used Headspace, which
Okay.
was
Yeah.
it's a meditation app,
It's like guided, right?
and yes, it's a
Okay.
guided meditation app. So they really walk you through, I guess they call it noting. So
Mm-hmm.
you're noting different feelings in your body. So you're sitting there with your eyes closed and you're using your breath as an anchor, and you're really like honing in on that. And of course, there's going to be different thoughts that come in and out of your brain, and
Mm-hmm.
you might get pissed at yourself, right? Like, turn these thoughts off. But that's the thing. Meditation is actually to tell you or show you there's all these different things going on in your body. There's all these thoughts that are coming and going and changing, and the goal of meditation is to become aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
and and so for me, that was the first process. So like I said, I was using it as a tool to eliminate anxiety. So I think I was feeling into the feelings of my anxiety and learning how to watch it come and watch it change and then be able to let it go. Now, the second, like the evolution of my meditation
Mm-hmm.
process. So I guess I could say when I first started meditating, I would meditate in the mornings. So
Okay.
sometimes it would be in my car, like before I went into work.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. So
I
you
would
were
actually,
so
it's so funny. I'm
you
like,
weren't driving.
if anybody's, wait, what did you
Were you
say?
driving?
No.
Oh, I was like, what the?
No. Yeah. So I would get to work, I'd pull
Okay.
into the parking garage, and I know, oh my gosh, I was thinking to myself, people are probably walking past and they're like, there's that nut Dana
Crazy
just
ass.
like sitting there with her eyes closed. But yeah,
That's
I would
awesome.
sit there, you put your feet on the ground, and I would, turn on the Headspace meditation. I think you could put 5 or 10 minutes on. And I would just do that, and I would go into work, and I noticed that I was so much more present also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was just able to be like, my brain was clearer. I wasn't like worrying or thinking of all these thoughts. So that's how I still practice to this day is
Okay.
I practice in the morning time.
Okay.
I make sure that I sit in a chair and I have my feet on the ground and I'm sitting straight up, because
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's not a relaxation technique. It's a technique to be more in the present moment.
Sure.
So, and as it's evolved, it's been a tool for me to recognize how I feel about things and
Mm.
to not have judgment on those feelings
Yeah.
and not to attach myself to what my thoughts are saying.
Yeah. I think everything you said is just it's perfect. There's so many the way you're meditating and it gives you to me, and I think you can agree, it's a reflection. When you're going through the day, you're the chaos of the day, and like you said earlier, like you load your plate with all these things you do, and I'm the same way. Like I don't know if it's ADD or whatever, but ADHD. I can't really reflect unless I'm like, okay, time to meditate. It's like you really got to concentrate on reflection, but allows you, like you said, to maybe really think about those things. Maybe what's causing that craziness. What am I actually feeling about this? It lets you get more clear about things. Like you said,
Totally.
and it also scientifically it's going to get you in like that parasympathetic state, which if you don't know what it is, basically you got sympathetic state, your parasympathetic part of your nervous system. Sympathetic is like, hey, fight or flight, bears are killing me, lions are coming, I got to run. Parasympathetic is like relaxed, things like that. So when you're in that state, you can see a lot clearer, you're calmer. You may not be jumping, you might not be bouncing off the walls, but you're calm, clear, and it's. I love meditation too.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
I'm like
And
opposite. I have to lay down though. I
do
mean,
you?
yeah,
Yeah, that's okay.
But I'm
That's
like,
the thing.
but mine's more,
Everybody's
yeah,
not
it's so
responsible.
different. It's so different for everybody. So with the meditation for you, I mean, let's talk about self-love, right? So
Ah,
that's kind of what, in my eyes, a big part of what your message is. And I think meditation for me is a huge part of self-love. It's like, okay, I need to take some time, do some meditation, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, you take a nap and, whatever, self-love. So tell me, how would you define self-love? Because I think
oh,
that word, you probably can't even define it, to be honest. I mean, it's such a huge term. What does it even mean to you?
yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, self-love, self-love to me means a lot of things, and you kind of hit on the first part of it, which is taking time for yourself
Hmm.
and befriending yourself.
I like
Like,
that. Okay.
so I've come to realize for a large majority of my life, I told you that my biggest thing is human connection. So
Hmm.
I absolutely love connecting with people and hearing their stories and watching them grow and succeed and accomplish things. And that just like gives me fire, and it's funny because I realized a lot of the times we're so good at making friends with other people, and we're so bad at like making friends with and loving ourselves.
Yeah. Damn. No, that's
So,
that's pretty profound. Man, it's so true. I think it takes a
yeah.
lot of time to get to that point,
Yeah, and I
if
think a
ever.
lot well, I think it can be cultivated for sure,
Mm.
but I think it takes those like some of the tools that we've talked about already. It's like self-reflection. I
Hmm.
think I think one of the scariest things that you can ever do is look deep inside yourself.
Yeah. People are scared to do it.
Yes, it's terrifying because I think we all feel flawed, right? We're
Yeah,
human, we're
we all are.
humans,
Yeah.
and we are all flawed.
Hmm.
But I think that sometimes we feel so alone and othered, and we think we're the only people who might be going through this, or nobody understands, and everybody else. Like for me, I can speak for myself. So I have struggled with self worth
Hmm.
for like throughout different periods of my life, and I think it's something just like meditation or any other muscle. Like
Hmm.
you have to practice it, you have to be aware of it, you have to know like, okay, like this happens, and maybe there will be periods of time where my self worth isn't like where it should be.
Yeah.
And I remember looking like, I thought, I was riding my bike, and I love to ride my bike. That's one of those things that I do to show myself
Okay.
love. And I would look at other people, and they might have the biker uniform on, and they
Mm.
might have a helmet, and they look like a racer. And I'm like, well, they've got it figured out, and I don't,
Yeah.
or maybe somebody has a business, right? And you're like, wow, they've got it figured out, and I don't.
Yeah. And you have no idea actually what part of the journey they're in.
Right. And that's the thing
Yeah.
is we're all human beings, and we all have struggles, and the love that we show other people, we have to show to ourselves. And we can do that by, I mean, something as simple as seriously giving yourself a squeeze on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Like, how often do you do that? And like do
Never.
it intentionally and say, like, hey, you know what? Like, you're freaking awesome?
It feels
Yeah,
good. I need to do this shit more often. Feels
right?
good.
It feels good. And also recognizing the way that we talk to ourselves. I mean, we're our
Mm.
own worst critics. We can really beat ourselves up. And so I think, recognizing that inner dialogue and kind of trying to change the trajectory. Like if you say like, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't have it figured out. Say I'm awesome. Like,
Yeah.
and believe it, because you would tell that to your best friend and mean it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And you should tell that to yourself too.
Yeah. It's so true. That's man. Self love is just so important.
So
What
important.
if someone came to you and was like, "Hey, I'm really struggling with self love, self worth." What's the first thing you think they should do? I mean the most basic thing? Because I think for that it comes to a point where maybe something happens, or I don't know. People aren't just born like, oh, I gotta focus on my self love and self worth. Like I think really people either hit a rock bottom or something traumatic happens, or say someone says, "Hey, I'm really struggling." Like, what would you tell them to do? What's the first step?
Yeah, I think I think taking a moment to slow down,
Yeah.
um be with yourself. And like for me, I would say it was that aspect of realizing that like humanity is connected.
Mm-hmm.
That there's not I would say okay, so it's a spiritual aspect for me,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah,
It is
same.
it's spiritual, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it is where we're all we're all on the same playing field.
Yep.
I
Spirits in
think
a
bringing
body.
yes,
Right.
like go back to your roots. And that's like the hardest thing to say. Like how do you put that into words to tell somebody as an action item,
It's so hard.
because it's something you have to feel and you have to believe.
Yeah.
And but I do think it takes with, it's just taking a moment to be with yourself
Mm-hmm.
and listening and feeling into like the feelings in your body, and maybe trying to like really feel into your heart space,
Yeah.
and that's meditation and practice and reading.
Yeah.
I think there's a
Therapy.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, there's all sorts of different tools, and you have to find what's right for you. And I
Sure.
think it is such a personal journey too.
Yeah. No,
That's
I
another
agree
thing.
with you. I think it needs to be like, no matter what, though, you have to pause and actually, like, it's going to be hard as shit in the beginning when you actually
Yeah,
learn about yourself. What's, not what's wrong, but what's bothering you. Why are you not feeling love, self love?
yeah,
You act like, I think you went on. Did you go on like a little trip or something to like kind of reset your headspace?
totally
So
did.
that I feel
Yeah.
like that's like a perfect thing. Like if someone was like, "Hey, I'm just struggling," like because people ask other people what they should do, and it's
Yes.
like, okay, well, what the fuck do you want to do? Like,
Yeah.
like
Right.
that's you can ask for advice, but like if I was struggling that bad, like, or if someone told me that, I would say, hey, find a weekend, find a day, find something where you can be completely by yourself. Sit down, journal all day, no distractions. You almost need like a distraction-free day and just cry and write
Yeah.
and just feel as much as you can and figure out, hey, what's going on? What do I want to do? And then you
Yeah.
you know work backwards. How do I get there? So
And that brings up another thing. So I can recall one day, I think it was probably the beginning of my journey
hmm
of realizing that I was at war with myself and that I needed to cultivate self-love.
hmm
And what I did was I grabbed a hammock. I bought a hammock on Amazon,
Ooh,
and
I love
it's like an
hammocks.
easy. Oh, they're
I
so
love them.
awesome. So I packed my backpack up. I had a couple of books with me. I had Untamed by Glennon Doyle
Okay.
and Nonviolent Communication. And I put them in my backpack, put my hammock in my backpack, and went for a ride. And I really did. Like, I didn't have my phone on me, you know?
hmm
I shut off. I think that's extremely important. You kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
It's like we're asking everybody else, what should we be doing? Like, what life should I live? What's important to me? And really it's shutting off everything around us and really taking that time to go inward and get to know ourselves. And you know what? You might not love yourself right away,
Yeah.
and don't be
And
hard
you
on
and you
that
probably won't.
either.
Yeah, you probably
You
won't. It's
know,
gonna take time.
you probably won't. It is such a process.
Yeah.
And somebody actually really great told me this I was struggling with just like body image. That's another thing that's like tough,
Okay.
and I think that goes with self-love. And
hmm
she had said, why don't you try body neutrality? And I was like, damn.
What is that? You gotta explain that to me.
Yeah, so that's just so like let's talk about self-love.
Sure.
Instead of self-love, let's say self-neutrality. So that's like instead of aiming up here, like you
hmm
might be down right now. You might have
Sure.
self, right? You might be upset with yourself, angry at yourself, whatever it is, whatever
hmm
that inner dialogue is saying. Well, I think the first step is recognizing that that's the thoughts that you're having,
Okay.
and then seeing what's obtainable. So maybe going from self-neutral or self-hate to self-love is a whole damn marathon,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah. You're not gonna.
And
It's not a light switch. You're not just gonna flick it. Yeah.
right. So what might be more obtainable is self-neutrality, neutral, being
Mm.
neutral, right? Coming here to the middle and saying like, what can I do to pull myself out? Like I picture the glacier. It's
Yeah.
like how much it's underwater
hmm
and is coming above, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to do work down below the surface so you can climb up to the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the top. And so I think that is going small, taking slow steps, and knowing that it's built over a period of time. And it's like those mini interactions of getting to know yourself and being with yourself that you build trust and love. And so keep practicing it, you know?
Yeah. That's, if there's one thing I think, if anyone could take from this podcast, it's, self-love is so important. Even if you are the happiest person in the world, you could still improve yourself. I mean, it's something you got to practice. You got to,
Totally.
it's a consistent thing throughout life. You're not going to go on one retreat and then just be shits and giggles the rest of your life. Like, it's not,
Right.
it's a constant practice. It's a practice. That's why meditations are called a practice, because something you just got to keep doing. Just going to a couple just quick questions for you. So,
Cool.
just some things for self-growth, right? It's probably a common topic, but if you were to tell someone, hey, you got to read this book, if someone's like, hey, I really want to get into self-growth, what's the first book you give them?
Okay.
You can only give them one.
Damn.
I mean, you can give them like 50 after, but just just the first one.
Okay.
That's like profound.
Well, the first one that comes to mind, and this is I'm already breaking the rule here because I'd probably give them four books prior
It's
to
all
this.
good.
But the first book that comes to mind is The Wise Heart by Jack Kornfield.
Okay. What is that? Never read it.
Yeah, it's a book about Buddhist psychology.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I found this book by accident. I tend to go down rabbit holes. Somebody gives me a little piece of information, and then all of a sudden I end up somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. You get a snack and you want the whole kitchen. I get it.
Oh my gosh. And actually,
right.
This is a funny story. So my I was having a panic attack, and I was totally going down like a deep dark place, and I was trying to fix everything I could in that possible moment, but nothing was working out, and that was scaring me, even more.
Oh yeah.
So my cousin sent me a video, which was Dan Siegel, and he is a doctor, and I think he works with the brain. Yes, okay. He works with the brain. And so he was talking about the brain and talking about how when you're going through a panic attack, find something in your body that feels good, like anything, you know, like, because you're focusing on everything that doesn't feel good, and that's totally like amping it up. So maybe your knee feels fine. So like lean into your knee, you know? Like,
no, it makes so much sense. Fine. Yeah, so much sense.
Well, that sent me down a rabbit hole because he did a podcast with a few Buddhist teachers, and I realized that Buddhist practices are different from what we think they are, and it's
absolutely.
It's psychology of the mind. It's really the practice of mindfulness, and so this book, The Wise Heart, really breaks it down into different Buddhist principles, and all of them are just more training and strategy to help enhance your practice of mindfulness, of meditation, of loving kindness, or having compassion, all sorts of amazing, beautiful tools for personal development.
I love that. Who's the author of that again?
Jack Kornfield.
Perfect.
And he also has great meditations that you can find on just YouTube. If you YouTube Jack Kornfield Vipassana, I would highly recommend that meditation.
That speaks to me. I'm very, very intrigued by the Buddhist religion. I've got some Buddhas right next to me. I actually have like some Buddhist type tattoos. I mean, this is all Japanese tattoos from. I can't lie and say I don't know everything, but I understand it and I appreciate just Buddhism practices so much. I don't want to.
That's another.
I'm going to say something religion wise, but.
No, yeah.
There's very good lessons to be learned from the Buddhist practices. That's what I have to say. Whether you're like whatever, I consider myself just like spiritual. Like I don't really have a like denotation right now, but like there's something you can learn from everything. Just having an open mind, like the Buddhist principles are so helpful. Like just karma and the way you treat yourself and others and mindfulness. It's powerful. You can believe in a Christian God, but like if you read these things, it's not conflicting. It's just something that's like, if you're like at home and like thinking, oh, I can't read this book, I'm a Christian or a Lutheran or a Jew or whatever,
Yeah.
It's not
You
like
can't.
that. Yeah, but if anyone's more accepting than any religion, it's probably Buddhists.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. I actually know plenty of people who are Christian and Buddhist.
Yeah,
You can be both.
yeah,
You don't have to be one or the other. It's not like you're worshiping the Buddha. It's not like that, you
right.
know? It is just principles to help you
Sure.
live a wholehearted life, you know?
Totally agree. So on that same page, podcast. Well, what's a podcast that you honestly? Let's just do two things. What's a podcast you love to listen to that's not self growth related?
Oh gosh. Okay,
Just come
so
on, guilty
small town.
pleasure. You like crime?
I
You
do.
listen to crimes?
There's a podcast called Small Town Murder, and
Oh,
the reason why I love it, it's because they're two comedians, and
oh, that's funny.
so it's hilarious because this guy goes so in depth in figuring out the crime that happened in this small town. So they're always okay. Let me start off. First, they talk about this shitty small town, and they
Mm-hmm.
go so in depth about this shitty small town. How many people are there? What are the demographics? Like, what is this town known for? What's their
Mm-hmm.
motto? Like, they tell you everything, and then they go into the crime, and they're telling the actual story in full complete detail, but they're just ripping on the murders, like talking shit about like the
That's
town,
hilarious.
like, but it's still spooky. So I'm
Yeah,
like, how
right.
are they getting information, comedy, and a spooky story?
Perfect storm.
Phenomenal.
The perfect.
Phenomenal.
That's awesome. That's if I wouldn't listen to that, I know Kara would. She loves the crime things, all the
Yeah.
murder mysteries and shit. That sounds hilarious though. Like I can even get into it.
Awesome.
All right. How about from like a productive standpoint? Like you're
Okay.
trying to learn something, or what's a podcast you like?
Oh my gosh. I think really what got me into personal development in 2017 and it's kind of sparked my first spiritual awakening was
Mm-hmm.
Tim Ferriss.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, I listened to him religiously. I actually have a notebook literally full of show notes and all these different things like, tools that I can incorporate in my life for success. And he actually had Jack Kornfield on his podcast.
Okay.
So, and then Sam Harris, who's another guy big into meditation
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, like he helped me through so many things. I did take a break from listening to Tim Ferriss for a little bit because I felt like I was on like success
Yeah.
high achieve
Yeah.
overload and like, oh my god, I need to chill,
Yeah.
But
It's Tim Ferriss is awesome, but he's like self growth on coke. Like it's
yeah,
like, I mean, really, it's just like it's go go go. You,
seriously,
you only work four
yeah,
hours a week, but you're really working like every fucking second. Like it.
your brain doesn't shut up.
Yes, it is great for motivation though. I like I said, I haven't listened to him in a long time either because it was like
Yeah.
got burnt out. I got his book, Tribe of Mentors. Have you read that?
I have that one too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful coffee table book because
I
it's
agree. It
huge.
looks great.
It's huge.
Yeah,
But you could
you can flip it open every once in a while when you're looking for some motivation, but
yeah,
right?
exactly. Great book, looks good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got two final questions for you. A little more serious,
Okay.
right? Maybe three.
Okay.
How would you define a success
How would I define success?
for you?
Yeah, I love that question, and
It's
and like
hard.
you said, it's so hard and it's
Yeah.
so personal.
Mhm.
For me, success is continually moving towards my big picture, um, making sure that I think. Well, see, here's the thing. I think success is created in small moments. There's like micro success and
Mhm.
there's macro success, right?
I think you have to
So,
look at it like that. Yeah.
micro success might be like, hey, I made it through a tough meeting that I was really having a lot of anxiety about,
Mhm.
and I stood strong, and I was compassionate with myself. So it's just like, okay, cool. I made it through that moment. But a macro success might be like, I launched my podcast. I've
Mhm.
been talking about having a podcast for how long, and now I'm out here doing it. And so I think success is actually turning those things that you want to do and putting them into action instead of just letting them be plans. And even if they fail, you learn something, right?
Yeah.
So I think success is taking action and making it happen and continually working on things.
That makes sense. So almost like doing what you want to do. Like that's the success. Whether
Yeah.
it's you don't have to make $1 million to be successful. If you don't want that or that's not what's valued. I love that answer. That's really good. Hard question, though, so I was curious what you're going to come up with. So
Yeah.
I got two more.
Okay.
So let's say 2020, right? Dark time, right? If you can go back, I know it's not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you can go back and have a conversation with yourself, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself to, whether it's get through the next year or whatever it is, what comes to mind?
It's simple, but it's just, you've got this, girl.
Yeah.
You've got this, and keep following your intuition. I think that my intuition guided me through 2020, and if I didn't choose to listen to it, I would be in a completely different place, and I wouldn't have had all this growth that I've had. And I feel like I'm like, I don't know, the people in my life that I have around me right now are all people who are on my level, who I love and appreciate, and they love and appreciate me.
Awesome.
And so I just wanted to, like back then, I think looking around, I didn't have that. So like, you've got this, girl. Like, listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. You're gonna get through, and it's gonna be freaking awesome.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I feel like that's gonna be a common answer. It's just like, everything's hindsight's 2020, but it's like,
right.
I mean, you've survived everything, 100%. If you're alive right now, you survived everything you've gone through, all the crazy shit. Like, you can get through it. If you are at home if you're at home listening and you're struggling, like, it is temporary. No matter what it is, whether it's good or bad, it is going to be temporary. You might come down, you might go back up. You might be depressed in a month or something, but like, again, you'll get through it. You'll learn something from it. Keep it moving. You got to just keep it moving. So before we get into our last question, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at the Dana Joy Project.
Okay.
My podcast is on Spotify, soon to be on iTunes and other platforms, but you can find me on Spotify.
Sweet.
The Dana Joy Project. And I do have a website which will soon be releasing blog posts and different fun things. So that's thedanajoyproject.com. So
awesome.
Thank you.
All right, Dana. How do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered? Oh man, that's an awesome question.
Good luck.
Yeah, I think I want to be remembered as, the person who brought joy and laughter and love, and who was able to be there and connect and support.
I love that. And you're doing that. And I want you to know what you're doing is aligned perfectly with how you want to be remembered. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. This definitely won't be the last time you're on here. There's so much stuff we can talk about, but I really appreciate you being on here. This is going to be the first episode coming back from the hiatus, and really going to be our launching pad to, this is going to be what this show is going to be. Thank you for listening to the Anxious Ambition podcast. We are on Instagram at Anxious Ambition. You can also check out our website at anxiousambition.com, where you can check out some of our apparel. Our apparel is the apparel is a caveat for people to break the ice for mental illness. So if you're watching the video at home, I'm wearing a "You're Not Alone" t-shirt. My goal is not for it to scream anxiety, but if someone like Dana or someone that's aware of the brand sees me wearing it, they go, hey, that guy is an ally. He's a team member. He knows what I'm going through. So if you are struggling right now, just know that everything's going to get better. And thanks for listening. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Anxious Ambition podcast. You can find us on all podcast platforms. Follow us on Instagram at Anxious Ambition. You can actually watch this podcast over on YouTube. Lastly, check out our website, anxiousambition.com, where we have all of our merch, and a portion of every sale is donated to NAMI, and it helps support the individuals and their families who are suffering from mental illness. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, take it easy.
Anxious. Ambition.